Okay, a little step-by-step guide then for a better rotation. I like these little series, try and do them once a week. The idea is that you go down to the driving range, rather than just necessarily practicing what you're already basically doing. You do some drills and exercises just to kind of do something different. So the big message that I say to a lot of the online people that I teach and people that come for lessons is that there's no real right and wrong. The idea is that if you're working on something, you're just trying to get better. I think sometimes we have this idea that we have to do things either correctly or incorrectly, and it's just not true. So the idea sometimes when you go down to practice is just to try and do things a little bit more different. So just to try and, unlock a few new little pathways that potentially weren't there before. And that's what these kind of step-by-step guides are. They're very much just kind of me hitting a few shots, things that you would mimic when you go down the driving range yourself. And the key thing out of today's lesson is very much going to be the rotation. First and foremost is always just kind of warm yourself up. So I'm going to kind of just go for some sort of different targets here. So kind of 57-yard shot there, comes up slightly short in the wind. And then just kind of hit a couple of these. So go kind of 75 on the right hand side. So when we're doing pitching, what we're doing is just basically warming up and loosening up. We're not necessarily trying to do anything technically, because you don't need a vast amount of rotation in a pitch. Because if you start to turn too much in a pitch, then you're just going to end up swinging too much over the top and too much out to in. So again, a couple of these pitch shots just catching the wind a little bit. Just try a couple more of these just to get the muscles going, and then can kind of go from there. Let's try one more at that target over there. Okay, so you'd hit a few little pitch shots to warm up. Then the exercise that I'd strongly suggest that you do, I'm going to crank it up to like a pitching wedge. What we're going to do now is just do a few swings using the cane, and it's going to go through the belt. And what I've done is, just in case you're a little bit self-conscious when you go down the driving range, or if you've got the ability to practice at home, then you won't be too concerned. But it's quite a short cane, so it's not massively noticeable. And the idea is, I suppose, even if it was slightly shorter than this, it's just something just to make you mindful. And the idea is as I hit a few, I'm just going to concentrate on, as I've finished, imagining that my belt line's quite horizontally placed, but also just to make sure that this is really finishing much more back in the center of my stance. So to try and avoid any sort of sliding and getting stuck this way, I'm trying just to concentrate now on pulling that hip back. And that's my only sort of conscious thought. So you can see the way the upper part of my leg starts to face much more towards the target. And what I've got to do, not the best hit, but I've just got to make sure that I keep the hands leading, just to try and stop too many things like that happening by missing towards the left hand side. So you'd hit a few shots like that, gentle sort of pitching wedges, which in today's conditions, I think they're only going about 90 yards, aren't they? Yeah, so kind of 100 yards. So not too far at all. But again, the point is that you're basically just warming up. So, and then in keeping with the pitching wedge, what we're going to do now is just going to hit half a dozen shots where we're just going to really emphasize the rotation by placing the cane underneath the handle. And then the idea is that it lives on the hip. Now don't cheat by bending your arms, but the idea is that you want it to basically miss you on the hip. So as I swing through and hit a few from here, I'll just move myself forward so you can see. Have to drive the hands forward, keep the hip moving back, and all this is going to do is just exaggerate that sort of feeling of shaft lean and clearance. And again, whilst we're doing this, you're just trying to open up new sort of pathways of feelings. It's not right or wrong. This isn't necessarily how you have to hit the golf ball, but for those of you that are lacking rotation, it's just a pretty simple sort of exercise where you should start to feel a nice element of clearance and able to still control the low point because you're driving the hands forward and not necessarily getting too caught up behind. Okay, and then the plan would be that, saying a lot of these step-by-steps, if you're going to practice for half an hour or so, then obviously you can just slow the sort of tempo down. Obviously I'm kind of just hitting half a dozen, so you get the idea, but obviously you can just repeat these sort of exercises for longer. In the last yesterday's video, I talked about the chest opening and the idea of feeling like the chest is opening is that it's different to the shoulders. So we'll kind of see the difference between that shot that I've just hit there and the next one that's upcoming, where this is going to be much more of a shoulder turn, right, which basically means that we've kind of ended up swinging massively out to in. So we'll start to see quite a decent amount of curvature from left to right. That would be kind of classically your out to in sort of swing. Whilst what I'm trying to say is that, you know, I'd swing up, if I place the club across my shoulders and I turn through, it's my chest that keeps moving. So it's the chest that keeps trying to find its way towards the target. And as I hit a few just short swings, I'm just trying to get the feeling that before I've even made a collision with the ball, that my chest is starting to move towards the target. Now, if you can kind of start to put together that feeling on the left hip and the chest, then you should start to feel really open and start to massively, you know, open yourself up, even coming in towards that hit. So if you're somebody who's naturally kind of like quite stuck and flippy, and there's a real lack of rotation, then this is the whole point. You've just got to sometimes exaggerate what it is that you're doing and not worry so much about it being right and wrong, and just have a little go at doing something different. Keeping with the 7-iron, then it's going to go a little bit dark on the backstroke, but normally do these sort of videos at night time so you can see the ball flight. But with the kind of tracer system now, I'm hoping that you can kind of still pick up as to what's sort of going on. The point is that, you know, you might want to just keep doing it slowly. You know, so similar to these sort of exercises, you just want to kind of feel like you're doing short, slow swings until the point where you can progress up. So the problem is, if you go down the range trying to hit full, fast swings straight away, the likelihood is that, you know, you're just probably going to end up returning back to default. So I think, you know, nice slow swings back and then really open up that chest. Try and drive that elbow to stop you from swinging too much out to in is a really good sort of combination to kind of progress with. Now, you know, you should carry this on for everything. So for example, start to go up to like a 5-iron now, and what we can kind of see is it's going to be exactly the same thing. Going to kind of just keep aiming pretty much straight down the mat. And just really open up. And what we can see is when I'm doing these short swings, because I don't necessarily rotate so far behind the ball, I stay quite a long way on top of the ball. So you stay very centered, and it's kind of quite nice in conditions like this to actually start playing a lower sort of hit shot. And that's basically what you would do. You'd kind of just, you know, do a few swings, opening yourself up, really getting that sense that you've opened your body up and your chest up before you've even made a collision with a golf ball. And even if you did start swinging a little bit out to in, I would generally suggest that in the grand scheme of things of making a swing change, you know, the likelihood of you going from a lack of rotation-y sort of swing to a heavily rotational type swing is unlikely. So it's worth just kind of, you know, if you are sacrificing anything and you start to hit the ball noticeably much better, but you're kind of swinging slightly out to in, but the contact's improved, well, then you can always rein the out to in by just realigning how your arms move. Now, for those of you that are kind of supple enough, then the more that you do this, the more that you'll feel the club lagging behind you. And then the more that you'll start to feel an activation down the left-hand side in that rib cage on the obliques. And then what you can start to do is start to do some kind of fuller swings where you'd kind of swing up towards the top and then really get this sense of opening the chest. And it's the chest that's opening, that's moving the shoulder, that's bringing the arm down. And then just start to experiment by hitting a few fuller swings, as I'm still doing here with my 5-iron. You'd kind of continue that through. I think at any stage where you feel like you're struggling and you're kind of going back to trades, then just go back to some of the shorter swings. I mean, 100% the idea is that when you go to the driving range, you need to make a decision as to what it is that you want to get out of it. So you can make a swing change pretty quickly. It's just that you're not necessarily going to coincide with a decent sort of return in terms of the shot. And then at the same token, if you go down the range very kind of influenced by how you're hitting the ball, then the likelihood is that you're not going to make a huge swing change either. So, you know, when you go to practice, you just need to make a decision on what it is that you're doing. Like I say, at any stage it feels too comfortable and you feel like you've returned back to the normality, then I'd probably start to suggest maybe work on going back to the shorter clubs, because they're generally easier to coordinate a hit with, and therefore you can become more susceptible and working on the rotation. It's unlikely, like I say, that if you're somebody who's getting massively stuck and a bit flippy through impact, that you're going to make a rotation and get the elbow driving and swing the club on plane and hit straight shots and all the rest of it. It's just quite unlikely. But what isn't unrealistic, and we've seen this with the live lessons that I've been doing on the YouTube channel, is that what you want to do first and foremost is when you go down to the driving range and you're trying to make a swing change, just try and break a habit. And one of the things that most amateur golfers suffer with is a lack of rotation in their swing. So just go down the range with the intention that you're going to work on rotation. You're going to try and get the feeling of opening the chest up much sooner towards the target in the early part of the swing. You're going to work on some of those shots where we use the cane, just to kind of trigger a little bit more of a rotation and a bit more of a clearance on that left-hand side. And things should start to feel different. When things start to feel different, then test it like I've done today with some of the longer clubs. But don't become too kind of disgruntled if the ball flights aren't as good. It's not really the end of the world. That's where you might want to necessarily kind of video your golf swing to see how you're getting on. But, you know, you're going to make a swing change and you're trying to make an improvement towards your swing. The likelihood is that you might, you know, not hit the ball particularly well in the first part of the swing, but obviously then you can kind of progress it from there. Hopefully you've enjoyed this step-by-step guide. It's some of the things that we've talked about before. You know, what I used to do on the channel, I used to put quite a few drills and exercises on there, but recently I've kind of stopped doing that because I think not enough people from what I knew were doing them. So what I'm trying to do now is put the drills and exercises into this sort of platform. And, you know, even as a nice little finishing one, even getting the feeling of looking for the ball before you've hit it is a nice way to feel like you've opened that chest up. You know, going back to these sort of wedges, opening up the chest, and you'll just feel much freer rather than getting stuck and flippy. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Catch up with you guys again soon.